We're at Rifles Only in Kingsville, Texas for the Brawl, and match director Jacob Bynum has taken the difficulty level of this match way up with some new, unique courses of fire that will challenge some of the best precision shooters in the country.
The biggest addition? New moving target systems.
Okay, which one is coming out first?
The black one is taller.
And on the stage, two moving targets running at different speeds. Keeping track of where the next target will be when it's time to transition, combined with the different leads for each target, earns this stage its colorful name. The challenge, you must switch targets after each impact.
Impact, transition.
So you can't just go and say, all right, I got my lead on this mover and stick with that mover. You have to shoot them alternately. So you have to go to the fast one, back to the slow one, back to the fast one.
Impact, transition.
Another challenge with a moving target, Jacob's helicopter prop Air Dingo. This stage has 3 positional elements. First, 5 rounds from the pistol at a steel target. Then over to the helicopter to engage a 400-yard mover. 5 times from the rope sling, then prone. And Air Dingo is small. The rule here is your feet may not touch the ground.
Impact! 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 That's 15. Good shooting, that's it. It had 5 seconds left.
The unique thing about that mover is that when it's close to you on the right-hand side, it's at one distance, but on the other side, it's at another distance, and it's got a slight uphill to a component to it as well. So you're really having to think on that one.
Buddy, let me tell you this. When he said get your feet off the ground, that's a challenge. It's tough to get that done, man. You're an evil man.
No, it makes you a better shooter. And that's what we want to do, is make better shooters. You go over there and you own that stage, you've got it together up here. And that's where it is.
You'll see something new on every mover event.
Stand by. Good.
Range Officer Lindy Sisk is overseeing the new tank trap mover stage. Shooters will engage the new mover from one of the tank traps using only a bag and a sling.
The target is a 7.5-inch wide by 10-inch high plate that's about 410 yards away, and it's moving both left and right at about 3.5 miles per hour. Our old mover used to move at about 2 miles an hour. A lot of the people come back year after year, and so I heard a lot of them say, oh, the lead should be about 1.5 miles. Well, it's not anymore.
The targets aren't the only thing that is moving. The Wild Horse Distillery Happy Barrel stage is new this year. The whiskey barrel rocks back and forth, and there's nothing the shooter can do about it. The shooter stands on a footstool and leans over the barrel to take 10 100-yard shots at a small paper target.
Jacob does a great job of keeping you on your toes, so it's the problem solving. How do I effectively manage the clock and manage the positions to get hits on steel to get points?
If you've never seen this place before, it is massive. Throughout the 16 courses of fire, you'll be shooting through a fence, off of a container, off of concrete culverts at various distances. But the longest shots in the match are taken from the iconic Rifles Only Tower. Frustration ladder. Each target impact gains you a point and some frustration. Shooters will engage 10-inch targets starting at 300 yards, climbing out to 1,000 yards.
Impact!
Missing a target puts you back to the beginning with a score of 0.
Back to 3!
Each shooter has 90 seconds and can stop any time. This stage has only been cleared once, and not during a competition.
Impact! Move to Foxtrot!
This year's high score on Frustration Ladder, 7 out of the possible 10.
Back to 3!
The biggest thing is just stress and frustration. That's why they call it the frustration ladder, because it gets to you.
Next objective on the tower.
Stand by!
With 1 minute on the clock, shooters must engage 4 targets at 400 yards, ranging in size from an 8-inch square plate to a 2-inch plate. A stage Jacob calls Test Your Limits. Miss one, and you are back to the beginning. New this year for Test Your Limits is the option to take a single shot at the 1,000-yard plate for 10 points.
You got a minute.
Miss this shot, and you'll take a 0 for the stage. The first one to take the chance, Gilbert Garza.
Boom!
Did you see where it was on there?
Dead center.
Right there. I like to go for the 1,000. It's a nice slow shot. It's one shot. You can full minute. You can dial your elevation. You take a nice steady wind gust, everything, and it's just a nice calm shot.
Boom!
Making the decision to shoot a single shot at 1,000 yards is risky. The stress of possibly missing the target and taking a 0 for the stage weighs heavily on every shooter right up until the moment the trigger breaks. Not to mention the fact you're going to need between 3/4 and 1.5 mils of wind hold. So it's not a simple decision, and in this match, shooters need every point they can get. Well, day 2 is next, and the leaders will struggle to stay in the fight to win.
The Brawl at Rifles Only is a 2-day event, and as day 2 gets underway, there are some clear-cut leaders emerging.
At the end of day 1 yesterday, we had a police officer who was leading the pack with his duty 308. And so, you know, it's still going to come down to the nut behind the bolt.
Senior Officer Eric Garza is a sniper on the SWAT team at the Corpus Christi Police Department. Eric discovered he was leading the match at the end of day 1.
Pretty amazing, pretty shocking. I didn't think I was doing that well. I couldn't tell if I was doing good or everyone else was doing bad.
Shooting his department-issued rifle in 308, Eric takes on the 400-yard plates on Test Your Limits, rather than the optional shot at 1,000. That last plate is 2 inches. That's 1/2 MOA at 400. It's tiny. And Eric cleans it.
Start over.
You could either take a shot at 400, the KYL, or a shot at 1,000, and I didn't think my rifle would make it to 1,000 very well, so I just figured I'd just try the 400 and ended up cleaning it.
Eric's duty rifle is competitive, but he knows its limitations at longer distances compared to others chambered in 6 and 6.5.
The wind affects it a whole lot more. The way I compare it to when I explain to people, it's like driving a minivan in the wind versus driving a Ferrari. So
Eric has experience in the South Texas wind, and so does Hornady pro shooter Jonathan Berry. He has returned with hopes of defending his 2017 match title.
Yeah, doing pretty good. Had a little bit of trouble yesterday morning, picked it up. It's a 2-day match, so you'll never know until the last round's fired how it goes.
Jonathan is shooting Hornady 140 grain ELDMs in 6.5 Creedmoor, and they are crushing.
Shooting a Impact Action, chambered by Studeville. I actually ordered the barrel on Monday. It shipped Tuesday. Broke it in and doped it out Wednesday and came here Thursday to shoot. So,
on the Wild Horse Distillery Happy Barrels, Jonathan struggles to keep the rifle stable on the rocking whiskey barrel. He shoots a 3 out of a possible 10. Not what he wants. Next stage, Pistol Know Your Limits, a precision pistol stage, unlike anything we've ever seen before at the Brawl. Shooting from inside Jacob's side-by-side UTV, bracing on the steering wheel at progressively smaller targets is a good way for me to end up with a 0. I play it safe, calling it quits after a few misses, taking 3 out of the possible 10 points.
I can tell you this, shooting from the seated makes it a whole lot more difficult.
Up next on the Pistol KYL, Jonathan Berry. He finds a stable rest on the steering wheel, creating 2 points of contact by resting both forearms. There's a minute on the clock, and precision is key. Jonathan takes his time on that last target. It's tiny, only 2 inches at 25 yards. That's 10 for the event. Over at Air Dingo to Mover, Eric Garza is on deck.
Go ahead and load and make ready.
This stage starts with pistol and ends up in the helicopter prop, shooting at an off-axis mover. Eric does well with 4 quick hits on the pistol target.
You can go ahead.
And gets to the chopper for 5 shots off the rope. His seated position looks solid, but his shots aren't connecting.
That's 5, transition.
Eric is a giant, standing at 6'5", making his prone on Air Dingo a real challenge.
We gotta get some small freaking helicopters.
With his feet on the skid, his knees are nearly dragging on the ground. The tough position is affecting his accuracy. Even so, he finds the target.
Impact. Time. Oh!
That last one doesn't count. He'll take a 6 on the Air Dingo mover.
It's very torturous, especially like that one right there. A different obstacle, so sometimes it can benefit you, and then sometimes it can't. So
It's time for the last stage of the brawl at Rifles Only. Shooters line up at the dreaded pistol mover.
93.
Kevin Worrell is here. He should do well on this stage. Kevin is well known for his pistol work. In 2014, he hoisted the Bianchi Cup for first place in the metallic division. Today, Kevin looks confident. Only one miss. He nearly cleans the stage, only missing once for a score of 19. That's the highest score we are going to see this year. Morgan Lampert is holding second place, only 2 points behind Jonathan Berry. He's off to a rough start with a few misses. There's the required reload. Morgan is on his game now, 16 points.
Slide hammer holster.
Jonathan Berry needs a 15 on this stage to win. The pressure is on, but he looks focused. As the mover makes its first pass, he gets after it. That was 9 hits. There's the required reload. The mover appears again. The winning shot, +1, seals the deal for Jonathan Berry to secure his title defense at the 2018 Brawl.
Match went pretty good. Had a couple bonehead stages, but outside of that, everything worked out pretty well.
That's 2 years in a row for Jonathan Berry. And Eric Garza is first in the tactical division with his duty rifle. His score, good enough for 4th overall in the match. But coming next, some unconventional sponsors, new to the shooting sports, and one that's close to Jacob's heart. Rifles Only is not just a great place for this match. It's primarily a training facility of Jacob Bynum's design, where he works with allied and domestic military units, as well as law enforcement agents. Well, this year, everything is falling into place for Jacob as his connections with a certain federal agency have led to a new business and match sponsor.
We do the competitions here, but mainly this is a training facility. The competitions are 1 or 2 weekends a year. We do some club matches on the club level, but mostly it's a training facility.
yeah, every other month I'd say we come down to Rifles Only and we shoot, and we go over everything from the basics of, just fundamentals of marksmanship to all the way out to 1,000 different positions. We try to recreate a lot of the matches into our training, because in the training in the real world environment that we come across, we usually never seeing laying down at a prone at 100 yards.
For military and law enforcement units, training for real-life situations means training with department-issued gear and firearms. In some instances, law enforcement and military personnel purchase and use their own equipment on the job. Match sponsor Chambered USA out of Phoenix, Arizona knows lives depend on that equipment.
Our motto is there's nothing in our store that we don't use, because we have a lot of law enforcement clientele as well, and we have a lot of friends that are law enforcement, and I don't want to see any of those guys on the street using anything that we wouldn't use to protect our own family.
Chambered USA is one of many stores that sells the high-end gear that precision rifle shooters want and need.
We do transfers, we do Class 3 transfers, as well as a wide variety of suppressors and short barrel rifles. If it's something that you want, we're going to help you get it.
Class 3 items such as suppressors are not required for precision rifle shooters, but they can be an advantage. These items, along with many others, are heavily regulated by the ATF, an agency that has spent time at Rifles Only.
In fact, the snipers for the ATF, they start here. I mean, they begin that process here for a 2-week course that we do for them.
The ATF is the federal agency that regulates alcohol, tobacco, and firearms. So if anyone knows the proper path to get a distillery started and licensed, it would be them.
Believe me, everyone talks about the ATF. It's a very, very professional group of guys, and they really are helpful, and they were able to point us in the right direction and cut down the time that took us to go from 0 to here.
Jacob's Wild Horse Distillery makes its first public appearance at the Brawl as an entirely new sponsor to the shooting sports. The distillery has its own stage at the Brawl, Happy Barrels, where shooters give the first barrels a proper break-in before they go on to their long-term assignment, aging whiskey. This year, the Brawl winners get a special gift to commemorate their performances.
1st through 5th, they're going to get a little barrel with the Wild Horse Distillery logo, a miniature version of that, and then a bottle to go with it, provided they're over 21.
Everyone else?
This is a honey mesquite.
Gets a tasting.
This is really good.
It's good.
The recipe has had help from some of the foreign allied military units that train at Rifles Only.
Became friends with several of those guys, and they'll go and get deployed, and they'll take a vacation, and whenever they're doing things like that, they'll end up out at Rifles Only. And some of them had some pretty interesting recipes that they had come up with.
The distillery is producing vodka, rum, and eventually whiskey from start to finish in their own special way.
Crafted, distilled, and bottled in Kingsville, Texas. We're starting from scratch here, and it's the one small batch at a time.
It's got to be an exciting thing.
It is very exciting. We're having a really good time with it. We've been real fortunate that Rifles Only has allowed us to do this new thing.
You've made it this far in the video, and for that, we thank you. If you're enjoying the content, please consider subscribing. It helps the channel, and we'll keep the uploads coming.